All right, everybody. Today we're going to talk about dividing decimals by powers of 10. And there's a lot that we're going to discuss, but we're going to jump right into it. So when dividing decimals using the powers of 10, you move the decimal to the left. If you recall from yesterday, when you multiply decimals by powers of 10, you move the decimal to the right. But when you divide, you move it to the left. So that number gets smaller when you divide, when you're dividing versus it getting bigger when you multiply. So with that being said, let's take a look at this grid. So this grid right here represents one whole. So let's shade the grid to represent 4/10. Okay, so we've talked about this before. One row or one column has 10 units. So if you want to see for sure, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So one column represents 1/10 stick. If we've got 4/10, then we know that we're going to shade 1 whole stick, 2 whole sticks, 3 whole sticks, and 4 sticks. So this right here in yellow represents 4/10. Okay? Now, if I were to shade only one square or one unit within this one whole grid, then that would be considered a 100th. Why? Because one of these flats or one of these grids represents 100. And if only one unit is shaded out of this grid, then you've got a 100th. So this is 4/10. All right. If I were to only shade one, say I only shaded this one and the yellow wasn't there, this would represent 100th. If I shaded 2, this would be 200ths. Okay. I hope that makes sense. So let's look at another one. This says shade the grids to represent 3400ths. Okay, so how many tenths do I have? Well, in my tenths place I have 3/10, so I'm going to shade 3 10 sticks. My shading's a little off, don't judge. Okay, so I'm shading my tenths in pink. That's 3 tenths. And then I'm going to shade 4 hundredths. So 1, 2, 3, and then 4. So this represents 34 hundredths. Because I've got 30 that are pink, 4 more that are yellow, 34 hundredths out of this one whole. All right? I hope that made sense. So if we continue talking about this, this says shade the grids to represent 7/10 and then 7/100. And then we're going to compare the two and see what the relationship is. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So here are 7 10 sticks, which represents 7/10 in yellow. Okay, so that represents 7/10. And then it says shade 7/100. So 7/100 is going to be in pink. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So this pink area right here is 7/100. Yes, my shading is off. Please don't judge. Okay. So what would be a division problem that you think could represent the relationship between these two numbers? What do you think? When we're I'll go ahead and tell you. We're going to be dividing. So if we're dividing, what would we be dividing by? We would be dividing by 0.7 or 7/10 divided by something gives us 7/100. What do you think that is? Well, this is kind of easy to predict because when we divide decimals, we move that decimal to the left. And if I were to divide and move this decimal one place to the left, what would I be dividing by? I would be dividing by 10 because I'm moving one place value. So 0.7 divided by 10 is 0.07 or 7/100ths. Okay. This also can mean or tell me, well, I'm not going to go there because I don't want to confuse you, but I hope that makes sense. So let's practice dividing decimals by powers of 10. So I know that this is the numeral form or standard form, but if I want the exponential form to help me out, I know that 100 equals 10 to the second power. So I'm going to take 8/10 and I'm going to divide it by 100. Remember, when I divide, I move that decimal to the left, however many places the exponent tells me to. It says 2, so 1 place, 2 places. And I got to fill that hole just like with multiplication with a 0. So 8/10 divided by 100 equals 8 thousandths. Let's look at another one. Say I have 862 and 1/10 divided by 10 to the 4th. Well, this exponent is going to tell me how many places to move my decimal to the left, not to the right. Okay, so I'm going to take my decimal and I'm going to move it 4 places. 1, 2, 3. Mr. Walker, there's no more numbers. That's okay. Dig a hole, place your decimal, and let's fill this hole with a 0. So that's going to give me 0.08621. And that is my quotient, because the answer to a division problem is a quotient. Look at this one. 47 and 7/10 divided by 10 to the 3rd. Remember, this exponent is going to give me the direction of how many places to move my decimal to the left because I am dividing. All right, so I've got my decimal here. I'm going to move it 3 places to the left. 1, 2, 3. Mr. Walker, there's no more numbers. That's okay. Fill that hole with a 0. So now my quotient is 0.0477. And that is my quotient, or my answer. Okay, let's do a couple more, 1 or 2 more, and then you will get a practice sheet. Oh man, I did it again. Let me see if I can fix this. All right, so if I have 95 divided by 10 to the 3rd. Remember, when we have a whole number, there's an understood decimal right behind the ones place. There's my decimal. And our exponent tells us to move that decimal 3 places to the left. Why the left? Because I'm dividing. You move it to the right when you multiply, left when you divide. So if I do that, 1 place, 2 places, 3 places. Mr. Walker, there's no number. That's okay. We're going to fill that hole with a 0. So the quotient to 95 divided by 10 to the 3rd is 0.9. Oh, excuse me, not 0 point. 0 point, yes, or 0 decimal. 0.095 or 95/100ths, and that is my quotient. Just for kicks, if I have 95 and I'm dividing by 100, what is the exponential form of 100? That is 10 to the 2nd. I can also look at the zeros. Hint, hint, wink, wink. All right, So the two zeros and the exponent tell us how many places we're going to move our understood decimal in this whole number. And we know that understood decimal is right behind the ones place. So if I'm moving it 2 places to the left because I'm dividing, my quotient will be 95 hundredths, or 0.95. All right, so you are going to get a worksheet. There are, I believe, 14 problems, and I want you to do your best on that. Remember to look at the anchor chart above. It says when you multiply, you move to the right. When you divide, you move to the left. All right, make sure you turn this in when you are finished.